No matter how much you save, no matter how hard you work, there is a nagging voice in the back of your head that says, it's still not enough. You clicked on this because you're tired of that feeling, the constant, quiet pressure that you're falling behind a finish line that keeps moving further away. But the reason you feel this way isn't because you lack discipline or a higher salary. It's because you're fighting a war on two fronts that you don't even realize you're in. While your own brain is hardwired to keep you in a state of survival-based panic, there is a massive, invisible system designed to profit from your confusion. Most people spend their entire lives trying to fix their bank accounts, never realizing that the leak is actually in their psychology and the hidden rules they were never taught. If you only look at the numbers, you'll stay trapped in the cycle of never enough forever. Real clarity isn't about a single tip or a lucky break. It's a total shift in how you see the world, the system, and your own fear. Without seeing the full picture, you're just guessing in the dark. Before we dive in, I'm curious. Where are you listening from right now, and what time is it over there? Drop it in the comments. So, let's begin. Chapter 1. The illusion of safety in an uncertain world. Money is never really about the numbers, is it? If it were, we'd all be fine. We can add, we can subtract. We can see the red ink and the green ink. But somehow, at 3 a.m., when the house is quiet and the laptop glow is the only thing lighting up the room, it feels like a monster. It feels like this shifting, breathing thing that could swallow us whole if we make one wrong move. We spend so much of our lives waiting for things to finally settle down. We tell ourselves that once the market stabilizes, or once the election is over, or once the company restructuring is done, then we'll be safe. Then we'll breathe. But here's the uncomfortable truth Tony Robbins and Peter Mallouk want us to sit with. The world is never going to settle down. Safety isn't a destination you arrive at. It's not a specific number in a bank account that suddenly triggers a peace of mind notification on your phone. In fact, the more we chase that perfect static certainty, the more anxious we get. Because deep down, we know the truth. We're trying to build a fortress on shifting sand. Think about the last time the headlines started screaming. Maybe it was a market dip or a global crisis or just some expert on TV looking very concerned while wearing a very expensive suit. Your stomach does that little flip. You feel that urge to do something, anything. Sell, buy, hide the cash under the mattress. Whatever stops the feeling of being out of control. But that's the trick. Fear grows when certainty feels promised. We've been sold this idea that if we're smart enough, or if we work hard enough, we can predict what's coming. We treat the economy like a weather report we can somehow control if we just buy the right umbrella. But the reality is much messier. And, strangely, much more hopeful. Being unshakable isn't about being a genius. It's not about having a crystal ball. It's about realizing that volatility, that terrifying up and down heart rate monitor of the financial world, isn't a bug in the system. It's the price of admission. When the market drops, and it will, it always does, it feels personal. It feels like the world is specifically trying to take away your retirement, your kids' college fund, your ability to sleep through the night. But winter doesn't happen because the clouds hate you. It just happens. True financial calm begins when volatility stops feeling personal. Imagine for a second that you stopped expecting the road to be flat. If you're driving through the mountains and you hit a curve, you don't scream that the road is broken. You just turn the wheel. You expect the curve. You might even, dare I say, enjoy the view. Okay, maybe enjoying a market crash is a bit much for most of us. We aren't monks. We're people with bills and dreams and a healthy amount of skepticism. But there is a quiet, powerful wit in realizing how much energy we waste trying to prevent the inevitable. We act like a 10% dip is a funeral when really it's just the tide going out, and the tide always comes back in. There's a quote in the book that hits home. The biggest threat to your financial well-being is your own brain. It's a bit of a gut punch, right? It's saying that all the sophisticated algorithms and fancy bank buildings don't matter nearly as much as that 3-pound lump of grey matter between your ears that is currently screaming emergency because a number on a screen changed colour. Our brains are still wired for the savannah. We see a red line on a chart and our DNA thinks a saber-toothed tiger is in the bushes. We aren't being stupid when we panic. We're just being human. But survival and wealth building require two different sets of instincts. Stability is a mindset before it is a strategy. If you don't find a way to be okay while the world is messy, you'll never be okay when it's safe. Because safe is an illusion. The only real safety comes from knowing the rules of the game so well that the noise doesn't bother you anymore. It's like being on a plane. When the turbulence hits, you look at the flight attendant. If they're calmly pouring coffee, you sit back down. You might still hate the bumps, but you know you're not falling out of the sky. Most of us have been looking at the wrong people for our cues. We've been looking at the people who get paid to make us feel like the sky is falling. Maybe it's time to look at the people pouring the coffee, the ones who know that the bumps are just part of the flight, the ones who have seen this 1,000 times before and aren't even blinking. It's a long flight. We might as well get comfortable with the movement. Chapter 2. The system isn't broken. It's working against you. It's funny how we blame ourselves for not being better with money. We look at our accounts or that pile of statements we haven't opened, and we feel this dull, heavy sense of shame. Like we missed a class everyone else attended. Like there's some secret code we were too distracted to learn. But what if the confusion you feel isn't actually your fault? Imagine walking into a casino. The lights are bright, there's free coffee, and everyone seems to be having a great time. But, you know, somewhere in the back of your mind, that the building wasn't paid for by the winners. It was built on the math of the house. The financial industry is a lot like that casino, only they've traded the neon signs for mahogany desks and very confusing vocabulary. They use words like proprietary, actively managed, and expense ratios to make you feel like you need a translator just to buy a piece of the future. But the truth is, most of that complexity is just camouflage. What costs you most rarely shows up clearly. We've been conditioned to think that if we pay more, we get more. That's how it works with cars, right? Or a good pair of boots. But in the world of investing, it's often the exact opposite. You pay more, and you actually get less. There's this quiet, slow-motion robbery happening in the form of fees. And I'm not talking about the $5 your bank charges you for using the wrong ATM. I'm talking about the 1% or 2% that investment funds take off the top every single year, whether they make you money or not. It sounds so small. 1%? That's basically the tax on a cup of coffee. But over 20 or 30 years, that 1% doesn't just take 1% of your money. It eats nearly 2/3 of your potential wealth. It's the difference between retiring on your own terms and working an extra decade because someone else needed a new lobby for their skyscraper. When the book talks about hidden costs, it's pointing to the reality that most people are running a race with a backpack full of bricks they didn't know they were carrying. And then there's the expert advice. Most financial advisors are good people. They have families. They like dogs. They mean well. But a lot of them are actually just salespeople in disguise. They're brokers, which is a word that literally means they're paid to sell you products, not necessarily to give you the best advice. There's a massive difference between someone who is a fiduciary, which is just a fancy legal way of saying they are required by law to put your interests first, and someone who is just trying to hit a quota. If you ask a barber if you need a haircut, the answer is always yes. If you ask a broker what you should do with your money, the answer usually involves a product that pays them a commission. It's not malice, it's just how the machine was designed. It's a system where the incentives are tilted away from you while you're told you're the one in the driver's seat. Awareness turns confusion into power. The moment you realize that the complexity is intentional, the weight starts to lift. You realize you don't need to be a math genius to win. You just need to stop playing the game by their rules. It's like finding out the shortcut your GPS gave you was actually just a scenic route designed to take you past a bunch of billboards. You aren't lost. You are just being guided by someone else's map. We spend so much time worrying about the market and what the economy is doing, but we ignore the leaks in our own bucket. You can't control the wind, but you can definitely fix the hole in the bottom of the boat. And yet, we stay. We stay in these high-fee funds because change feels risky. We stay with the advisor who makes us feel slightly confused because we don't want to seem difficult. We'd rather lose thousands of dollars over a lifetime than have one awkward 10-minute conversation. It's a strange part of the human condition, isn't it? Our desire to be polite, or our fear of looking foolish, costs us more than the actual market crashes ever do. We're told the system is broken when the stocks go down, but the system is actually working perfectly for the people running it. It's designed to keep you just informed enough to participate, but just confused enough to keep paying the management fees. But once you see the strings, you can't unsee them. You start to realize that the path to being unshakable isn't about finding a magic stock that goes to the moon. It's about stripping away the nonsense. It's about getting back to the basics that the industry tries so hard to hide under a pile of jargon. It's about realizing that you don't need to beat the system. You just need to stop being its favorite customer. Because when you stop paying for the house's edge, the math finally starts working for you instead of against you. And that's when the game actually gets interesting. Chapter 3. Rewriting the rules of long-term wealth. It's tempting to think that once you see the strings, the next step is to become a master puppeteer. We get this surge of energy, this idea that if the system is rigged, we just need to be faster, smarter, or more aggressive to jump over the traps. We start looking for the play of the century. We scan the news for the next big thing, thinking that wealth is something you capture like lightning in a bottle. But what if boring decisions created real freedom? There's this quiet irony in the lives of the truly wealthy, the ones who stay that way anyway. They aren't the ones screaming on trading floors or checking their tickers every 4 minutes in line at the grocery store. Usually, they're the ones who have accepted a very humble truth. You cannot outrun the future, but you can certainly prepare for it. We live in a culture that obsesses over the start, the big launch, the first million, the lucky break. But wealth isn't built by prediction. It's built by principles. Think about a giant oak tree. It doesn't try to predict when the rain will fall or exactly which way the wind will blow next Tuesday. It just builds a root system that doesn't care about the weather. It follows a simple, repeatable set of rules. Sun, water, time. Repeat. Our problem is that we're constantly trying to optimize the sunlight. We want to find a way to grow 10 feet overnight because we saw someone else on the internet do it. And in that rush, we forget to actually grow the roots. Tony and Peter talk a lot about asset allocation. It sounds like a dry, dusty term from a textbook your college professor used as a pillow. But, in plain English, it just means not putting all your eggs in one basket, and then making sure those baskets are in different rooms. It's the only free lunch in the world of money. If you have some of your life in stocks, some in bonds, some in real estate, you stop being a victim of the now. If the stock market catches a cold, your real estate might be perfectly healthy. You aren't winning every single day, but more importantly, you're never losing everything at once. There's a relief in that, isn't there? The realization that you don't have to be right about everything. You just have to be generally right about the structure. Wealth grows when decisions stop chasing perfection. We kill ourselves trying to buy at the perfect time. We wait for the dip, or we wait for the recovery. And while we're waiting, life is happening. Our kids are growing up. Our joints are starting to creak. We're trading our most precious non-renewable resource, time, for the sake of maybe saving a few percentage points on an entry price. The most successful investors don't try to time the market. They just spend time in the market. They understand that the perfect moment is a ghost. It doesn't exist. By the time you realize it was the perfect moment, it's already in the rear-view mirror. There's a quiet bit of humor in how much we complicate this. We'll spend 6 hours researching a $400 toaster, looking at every review and comparing heating elements. But then we'll take a hot tip from a guy we haven't spoken to since high school about where to put our entire life savings. We're wired for the drama. We want the story. We want to be the person who saw what no one else saw. But the real secret is that there is no secret. There are just boring, consistent habits that feel unimpressive in the short term, but look like magic 30 years later. Compounding is the most powerful force in the universe, yet it's the hardest one for our brains to actually feel. We see $1,000 turn into $1,070, and we think, that's it? I can't even buy a decent couch with that profit. We get bored. We get restless. We want to go all in on something that feels faster. But the 1,070 becomes 1,144. And eventually, that slow, rhythmic heartbeat of growth starts to pick up speed. It's like a snowball. At first, you're just pushing a tiny, cold lump of slush across the yard, wondering why you're even bothering. Your hands are cold and it doesn't look like much. But then it hits a certain size. It starts to pick up more snow with every rotation. Suddenly, it's moving on its own. You aren't pushing it anymore, you're just guiding it. That's the goal. To get to the point where the money is doing the heavy lifting so you don't have to. But you only get there if you stop trying to be a hero. You only get there if you stop listening to the voices that tell you it has to be complicated to be effective. Freedom isn't found in the complex. It's found in the reliable. It's found in the simple rules you can actually stick to when things get ugly. Because eventually, things will get ugly. The wind will howl and the headlines will turn dark again. And in those moments, you'll realize that your boring plan wasn't boring at all. It was the only thing keeping you upright. Chapter 4. Staying calm when the world panics. It always starts with a whisper, a headline you'd normally ignore, a certain look on a news anchor's face, a nervous text from a friend who usually only sends memes. And then, suddenly, the whisper becomes a roar. The red numbers start cascading down the screen like a broken dam, and that familiar, cold knot begins to tighten in your stomach. This is the moment. This is the moment where all the books, all the podcasts, and all the boring principles we talked about go into a box in the back of your mind. And your lizard brain takes the steering wheel. It's easy to be a philosopher when the sun is out. It's a lot harder when the rain is coming in sideways and you're standing on a sinking pier. Because in those moments, your intelligence doesn't matter. Your IQ could be 160, but if your emotions are at a 10, you are functionally a child. Market crashes test psychology, not intelligence. We think of the market as this massive mathematical machine, but it's actually just a collection of millions of nervous humans all reacting to each other. It's a giant game of I'll run if you run. And when everyone starts running, the exit gets very small, very fast. There's this image we have of the successful investor, this cold, calculating person who never feels fear. But that's a lie. The pros feel the fear. They just don't let it dictate their movements. They know that the real danger isn't the market dropping 20%. The real danger is you abandoning the plan at the exact moment the plan is supposed to be working for you. Think about it. If you went to the grocery store and saw that your favorite steak was 30% off, you wouldn't run out of the store screaming that the world was ending. You'd buy 3 of them. You'd be thrilled. But when the world's greatest companies go on sale, we don't buy. We panic. We sell. We literally pay someone else to take our future away from us at a discount. It's the only business in the world where the customers run away when there's a massive sale. This moment decides more than you think. If you can just stay still, if you can just breathe through that urge to do something, you are doing more for your future self than 1,000 hours of overtime ever could. There is a massive, invisible transfer of wealth that happens during every crash. It moves from the impatient and the panicked to the patient and the prepared. It's like being in a theater when someone smells smoke. Most people are going to stampede towards the door. Some will get hurt. Most will lose their shoes. But the person who knows where the fire extinguishers are and knows that the building is actually fireproof just stays in their seat. They might be uncomfortable, their heart might be racing, but they stay. There's a quote from Warren Buffett that Peter and Tony love to remind us of. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. In plain English, when everyone else is acting like the party will never end, check for the exit. But when everyone is convinced the world is over, that's usually when the sun is about to come up. It's a bit ironic, isn't it? We spend our whole lives trying to fit in and be part of the crowd. We want to be liked, to follow the trends, to belong. But in the world of wealth, belonging to the crowd is the fastest way to stay average. To be unshakable, you have to be willing to be the weirdo who is calm when everyone else is hysterical. You have to be okay with being wrong in the short term so you can be right in the long term. Discipline during chaos becomes a long-term advantage. It's not about being a hero. It's about being a person with a memory. If you look at the history of the last 100 years, the world has ended about 50 times. We've had wars, pandemics, depressions, and bubbles. And every single time, 100% of the time, the world didn't end. The markets recovered. The sun came back out. The only people who truly lost were the ones who checked out while it was still dark. So, when the next panic hits, and it will, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 3 years, don't try to be smart. Just try to be still. Remind yourself that you aren't losing money. You're just watching the tide go out. And the tide, by its very nature, has no choice but to return. But even when the money is secure, and even when you've mastered the panic, there's still one more question that sits at the bottom of everything. What is all this actually for? You will learn in the next chapter. Chapter 5. Redefining what rich actually means. I sometimes wonder if we're all chasing a ghost. We talk about the number. You know the one, that specific glistening figure in our heads that, once reached, will finally permit us to relax. We imagine ourselves standing on the other side of that number, suddenly transformed into people who don't worry, people who are generous, people who are finally happy. But money is a strange lens. It has this way of magnifying whoever you already are. If you're anxious without money, you'll likely just be anxious with a larger bank account. Only now you'll have more to lose. If you're a person who feels not enough today, $1 million is just a very expensive way to still feel like you're missing something. Financial success without peace is still poverty. It's a bit of an awkward realization, isn't it? To spend decades climbing a ladder, only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. We've been taught to measure wealth by what we can collect, but true wealth is actually measured by what we can give away. Not just in terms of money, but in terms of our presence, our time, and our mental energy. Enough means something different for everyone. For some, it's the ability to buy a plane ticket without checking the price. For others, it's just the quiet dignity of knowing the rent is covered and there's food in the fridge. But for all of us, enough is a moving target that our ego keeps pushing further down the road. Wealth is a tool for choice. That's it. It's not the prize, it's the fuel. It's the thing that buys you back your Tuesday afternoons. It's the thing that allows you to say no to a toxic boss or yes to a friend in need. If the money isn't buying you freedom and a bit of soul-level quiet, then it's just a very shiny set of golden handcuffs. There's a confession at the heart of all this. Most of us are terrified of being ordinary. We think that by accumulating more, we become more. But the most unshakable people aren't the ones with the most toys. They're the ones who have realized that they are already whole, and the money is just there to help them express that. As we look back at everything we've talked about, the market crashes that felt like the end of the world, the hidden fees that nibbled at our dreams, the boring rules that kept us safe, it all starts to look a bit different. The volatility isn't the enemy. The system isn't the enemy. Even our own fear isn't the enemy. They're just the conditions of the game. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you finally get your hands back on the things you can change. You start to see that an unshakable life isn't one where nothing bad ever happens. It's a life where you know deep in your bones that you have the tools, the discipline, and the mindset to handle whatever the world throws at you. It's the feeling of walking into a storm and knowing you've built a house that can stand. Not because you're lucky, but because you took the time to understand the physics of the wind. The end goal isn't the money. It's who you become in the process of mastering it. It's becoming the person who stays calm while others panic. The person who sees through the noise. The person who knows that rich is a state of the heart, backed up by a solid plan in the bank. We've walked through a lot of truth together. And honestly, I'd love to know where you are on this path. Are you just starting to clear the bricks out of your backpack? Or have you finally reached that point where the turbulence doesn't make you spill your coffee anymore? If you feel like sharing a bit of your story, or even just a thought that stuck with you today, I'll be down in the comments. It's good to know we're not walking this alone. And if this conversation meant something to you, if it made the world feel a little less chaotic, it would mean a lot if you'd let me know by hitting that like button or subscribing channel for more of these talks. It helps keep this space alive for all of us. Take a breath. You're doing better than you think.